One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. My name is Alex Mason and I am your host. This is the show, the only show dedicated to helping you master both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process, especially if you're coming from a non-finance background like myself. You want to know what all these things mean. You want to understand the basics, you want to understand the details, and then, of course, move on to the more advanced topics. And that's what we're here to do. We're talking about valuation, and today's episode is related to the world's most famous investor, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, of course, is known for Berkshire Hathaway becoming the most wealthy people in the entire world. And what does he have to say about multiples? We've been talking a lot about multiples, but what does Warren Buffett have to say? Well, Warren Buffett prefers EBIT multiples over EBITDA multiples. So why does he prefer EBIT multiples over EBITDA multiples? That is today's question. And in order to answer that question, we have to first ask ourselves, again, what are the definitions? Remind ourselves what these things mean at a fundamental level. Well, we know that EBIT is earnings before interest and taxes. And we also know that EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So the difference between those two things is that one accounts for depreciation and amortization and the other does not. So what does that mean from a practical perspective? Well, EBIT accounts for the costs of capital expenditures. Now, it doesn't explicitly do this, right? If you and I look at an income statement, we're not going to see the cost of the capital expenditures spelled out directly within EBIT, but indirectly via depreciation expenses, which are embedded perhaps in our cost of goods sold or some of our other operating expenses, that's where they can be found. Now contrast that with EBITDA, which adds back depreciation, right? And if you're adding back your depreciation, that means you're hiding your capital expenditure costs. And so sometimes this isn't a big deal depending on the type of business that you're looking at, but sometimes it's a huge deal and you're going to get very different numbers for your EBIT versus your EBITDA. So there can be a very big difference between these two metrics for capital intensive businesses. And for Warren Buffett, he's interested in understanding the true intrinsic value of a business based on its earning power beyond the capital required to simply maintain the business. He wants to know, how much free cash flow is this thing going to produce for me going forward? And it makes sense, right? Because Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway, especially at this phase in his career, I mean, the man's been going on like 6 or 7 decades at this point. He's really interested in buying larger businesses that are producing hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, because that's going to move the needle for a company the size of Berkshire Hathaway. It's not as profitable for him to focus on smaller businesses anymore because on a percentage basis, it just wouldn't grow that much. So he's looking for big businesses. And what do big businesses tend to have? Not always, but tend to have. Bigger businesses tend to have larger capital expenditures. And so that's why he prefers these EBIT multiples over EBITDA multiples, because it's right there. The capital expenditure cost is accounted for in EBIT because depreciation hasn't been added back. And that's fundamentally what we're looking at and why Warren Buffett considers that more preferable, and why you and I, as potential investment bankers ourselves, might consider that to be a better strategy when looking at valuations, especially for certain types of companies. So that is the reason. Okay, that's what I got for you today. Quick episode today. This is Alex Mason with Investment Banking Insights, and we're going to continue our discussion on multiples in the next episode. Join me there. All right, have a good one.